The multidisciplinary discharge routine includes 7 sections. We'll now move on to documentation. Documentation includes both instructions for the patients and also summaries. Summaries can still be dictated as they always have been. Instructions are voluntary but very helpful to be completed for the patient. We double-click on one of these elements in order to launch the provider documentation. I won't go into every detail of a PDoc note. Please see separate educational materials on how to use PDoc, but I do want to point out the important elements as it pertains to the discharge process. This is the discharge instruction template. We'll notice a few elements at play here. One is that the patient's problem list has pre-filled in the note. We can collapse it by clicking here. I'll click the plus sign again and open it back up, and we see that it has all of the patient's problems. Now we may or may not want to include all these problems in the patient's instructions. If we want to remove a problem, let's say the liver abscess, which is already resolved, we'll hit the red X. If we want to change the order of priority in the instructions, we can use these arrows to change the order. We can also add additional information for each of these diagnoses. In addition, we sometimes may want to exclude information for the patient. For example, I might not care to include the status on hypertension for the patient, and I'll click on the icon here. And that will make it such that this information won't show up on the patient's instructions. The other elements of the instructions are fairly self-explanatory. Remember that any time in a PDoc template, when you want to look at the final product that will be printed out, you can click on the preview button. This will show you the information that will be printed out and what the patient will see. You hit return to go back to the template and to continue editing the instructions to whatever degree you wish. You'll notice in the instructions template that there are presets for core measure related items. You may choose at times to start writing the instructions early in the course of the patient's care. You can always do so and then save the document as a draft to be returned to later on during the patient's care. You'll notice that it's listed here as a draft document. To open it back up, I'll click on it. At whatever time I think my document is complete and I want to finish it, I click the Save button. I'll have a few choices. I can save it once again as a draft, I can save it as signed, or I can cancel the document. In this case, I'll sign it. To sign, I always have to enter my PIN and hit return. My discharge instructions are now a signed document that I can find in the multidisciplinary discharge desktop. I'm going to go back and I'm going to choose one of the discharge summaries. Again, this is a voluntary document at this time and you may choose to dictate this document. As with the instructions, this document template will pre-fill with the patient's problem list, which we can expand and contract as we need to. We'll also note that we have the discharge medications brought into this particular document. Clicking on the notepad will show those medications for us. We also note that there are several red asterisk fields in the summary. These are required fields if we use this template. The requirements are based on regulatory and coding needs that go along with our documentation. If I choose to save the document without having completed the required fields and hit Save for signed, the system will remind me that I need to complete required questions. Clicking on this button will take me right back to the template, and I can fill out the required fields. Again, also, like with the instructions, there are presets for core measures. This concludes the video presentation on the fourth section of the discharge routine, the physician documentation.